The book of Daniel in our English Bibles is found in between Ezekiel and Hosea, representing the last of the quote-unquote major prophets. In the Hebrew Bible, the book of Daniel is part of the Ketuvim, the writings, along with books like Esther, Ezra, 1st, 2nd Chronicles, Nehemiah, books like that. The book of Daniel is a very controversial book, an often disputed book, and yet an essential book for us as Christians, considering how influential it proved in terms of Jesus as the Christ and the visions of Revelation. So we do well to try to consider what we can understand from the book of Daniel and understand how the book of Daniel can be of an encouragement to our faith. Some basics on the book of Daniel. As indicated, it is considered among the prophets in English Bibles, not among the prophets in the Hebrew Bible, among the writings. Daniel can be divided into two sections. The first 6 chapters feature narratives involving Daniel, and the second half, from chapter 7 through 12, are various visions that Daniel received and their meaning. The character Daniel, we're told from the beginning, is exiled in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. So that would be something like 602, 601 BC. So even before Ezekiel, and of course very much before the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 and that final exile. Then it will talk of him all the way into the days of Cyrus the king, which would be 539 BC. So he's a young man in 602, and he apparently dies somewhere around 539, 538, something of that sort. The book of Daniel itself, of course, has a lot of controversy associated with it in terms of its dating. Some believe, based upon this, we would believe this is a record of what Daniel saw, and stories about Daniel that would have been collected soon after his death in the early Persian period, or maybe while he's alive. It is also believed by many scholars especially to be a work of the Hellenistic period. A lot of what he has to say, especially in chapter 11, is inarguably leading toward the Hasmonean revolt and everything involved with Antiochus IV in 167 BC, and so many want to date it to that kind of time period. But we have no reason to necessarily expect that, because again we believe that Daniel can forecast the kind of things that are going to happen, but that is something that we do see consistently in a lot of the literature. The book of Daniel does represent an apocalyptic genre, especially the visions. The visions are given, there's an angelic intermediary. They involve what's going to happen, signs of the times, that have a lot of these very visceral, powerful illustrations going on that are very gripping. And because of that, people have also taken in all kinds of wild and crazy directions. And so we do well to try to understand what's going on in the book of Daniel. So we're going to go through and look at what's in the book of Daniel, and then try to come to some kind of understanding of what we're supposed to do with this material. So as indicated, the first 6 chapters are all about stories about Daniel himself. And we begin by understanding who Daniel is. That we're told and we're introduced that there is this, that Nebuchadnezzar advanced against Jerusalem, lays at siege in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, and that he's delivered into power, and that it all goes to Babylon. This could actually be the one that is around the beginning of Jehoiakim's reign. It could have lasted that long, so maybe he does get exiled eventually, only in 597. But a lot is associated with this kind of 3rd year. Daniel is among other men, including Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, who are found by one of the associates of the king, who was sent to find people in the royal house among the nobility that could be properly trained as good rulers for Babylon. We have to remember that these empires, we call them empires, and the centralized bureaucracy that we assume with empires are not always the case. That Nebuchadnezzar would have liked to have a lot of these places ruled by client kings, and so he's preparing people to rule for him, basically. And these men are appointed to this end, and they're given names in Akkadian. Babylonian names: Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Throughout, consistently, we're going to hear about Daniel as Daniel, not Belteshazzar, or sometimes some of the Babylonians will call him that. But interestingly, we're going to learn of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as that, not as Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The first story in chapter 1, which is all this is coming from, is about food. Daniel is not going to eat the royal delicacies or the royal wine. Whether they're not kosher or he doesn't want to be compromised with idolatry, we're not sure. So he asks to be fed with only vegetables. And of course, the overseer, in charge of him, is going to be in trouble if something goes wrong. But yet, after a while, they looked healthy. And so he kept getting vegetables. And we're told that there was no one quite like these 4 men in terms of their ability to serve. And so they enter the king's service. And he, we're told, therefore, is in the king's service until the first year of Cyrus the king, especially with Jerusalem being destroyed. There's no more client state of Judah. It's now just part of the empire. That's why Daniel will not be going back to rule there. He is going to stay in Babylon, and then eventually. It seems like he's in Babylon the whole time, actually. Then we start having the other stories. Chapter 2 is the dream Nebuchadnezzar has. It's almost a parody here, that the dream, he says he has a dream, he asks people to come and first tell him what the dream is and then interpret it. And these are all the wise men, magicians, and things. And it's at this point, by the way, the text switches in Aramaic, and will stay in Aramaic through most until chapter 7, and go back into Hebrew, one of the texts that has kind of a double language thing going on. And then, of course, eventually there's all this threat to the lives of everybody. Nebuchadnezzar constantly wants to dismember people and then destroy their houses. That's one of the things he keeps wanting to do. He's going to do that to all these people who can't tell him the dream. And then Daniel's made aware of it. He prays. God gives him the dream and its interpretation. He goes before the king and he tells the king, hey, it's not because of me. There is a God in heaven who has revealed these things to me to tell the king what's going to happen. And it's a statue. And of course, it's a statue, the different levels, gold on top, silver, bronze, and then iron, and then iron mixed with clay. And then there's the rock not made with hands that crushes the statue toward the bottom of the feet. Very little argument at the beginning. It's Babylon. The second is seen as Persia, Medo-Persia. Why we keep bringing the Medes into it. They're part in the text here, but they're not much of a force after the Achaemenids take over in 539 BC. The Greeks are definitely something involved with the rest of it. Mostly, traditionally, the Macedonians are the bronze, and then the Romans are the iron mixed with clay, where the kingdom, of course, becomes the kingdom of Christ. Someone associated with the Ptolemies and Seleucids. That's the dream and its interpretation of what God is going to have done and what's going to happen. And Nebuchadnezzar honors Daniel for having interpreted the dream thus. In chapter 3, as rulers want to do, Nebuchadnezzar actually builds a statue looks like this and has everybody bow down and worship it. Everyone does except for our 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel's not in this story at all. We assume he also did not serve it. And so Nebuchadnezzar is really mad at them, has them thrown into a fiery furnace because they will not bow down to a statue. But then he looks in his side and sees 4 characters in there. The 3 men walking around, and one like a son of the gods, one like a son of man is in there as well. And when they bring them out, of course, there's not even a smell of fire on them. And Nebuchadnezzar glorifies the name of the God of heaven. In Greek translations of Daniel, there is an extended prayer of the 3 young men that will continue on for 60 verses, a very long prayer. It's interesting for devotional dedication purposes, but it is not in the original Hebrew text. Chapter 4 represents Nebuchadnezzar's letter to everybody about how he had a dream. And the dream then came to pass where he got all proud and arrogant. Look at how great everything is I made. And God then immediately humiliated him. And he went around eating grass like an animal for a few months. And then finally came to his senses and glorified the God of Israel. And that is preserved in chapter 4. Chapter 5 is the handwriting on the wall, where a later king... Well, it's a challenge here. Nabonidus is the final king of Babylon, all the records. He has a son, Belshazzar. Belshazzar is called a king here. It's very possible that Belshazzar has been made kind of a co-regent with Nabonidus. Nabonidus is out in Arabia doing his thing, and Belshazzar is ruling in Babylon. And Belshazzar, one night, celebrating and having a good time with his friends, brings out all the dedicated vessels of Yahweh from the temple and starts drinking, eating out of them with all of his people, including courtesans, and they praise idols. And then all of a sudden they see a hand writing words on a wall, and they get all freaked out. None of the wise men can interpret it, but then someone remembers Daniel. Daniel's brought in and interprets as Mene, Mene, Tekel, Pharsin. That God has numbered your kingdom's days brought to an end. Tekel, you weighed on the balances found lacking. Perish, your kingdom's divided and given to the Medes and Persians. And Mene is numbering, Tekel is weighing, Paris is division, also sounds like the Parsin for the Persians. Belshazzar honors Daniel, but Belshazzar is killed that night, and that's when the Persians take over in the guise of a guy named Darius the Mede. And in chapter 6, he's the one who elevates Daniel as one of the guys overseeing all the satraps. Daniel's doing a great job. Everyone else is jealous of him, tries to get him in trouble with his god, gets Darius to say, hey, everyone should only serve you for a while and pray to you. Daniel still prays the God of heaven. They catch him. He's thrown to the lion's den. Lions don't touch him. Darius is happy. Throws the people who accused him in there, and they don't even make it into the back until the lions completely overpower them. And then Darius sends a message out to glorify the God of Israel. And then we're told that Daniel prospered in this Darius and also in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Then in chapter 7 we start getting these visions. And the Daniel 7 vision is where he sees beasts coming out of the sea. He sees a lion with eagle's wings. The wings are pulled off and is made like a human being, and a mind was given to it. The second one was like a bear. The third one was a leopard. The fourth was a terrible beast that had rows of iron teeth, and a horn came out of it, and all these other things. And in the days of that one, he sees the Ancient of Days, and a one like a Son of Man is brought before him and is given ruling authority, honor, and sovereignty. All peoples, nations, and language groups are serving him, that his authority will be eternal, will not pass away, and his kingdom will not be destroyed. Starting verse 15, an angel comes to interpret all this for him. These are the successive kings. And we understand kings to be empires, and so it would be the Babylonians, Persians, the Macedonians, and then finally the Romans. And then, of course, what will happen when all this happens, and of course the coming of the kingdom and the one like a Son of Man. In chapter 8 he has another vision. This time is of a goat and a ram, and this is Persia and Greece, and what that involved. An angel interpreted as well. Daniel 9 features a prayer. Most of Daniel 9 is a prayer of Daniel. Daniel recognizes that 70 years has come and prays to God as a lamentation for his people and asking for forgiveness. And he laments, and he appropriates the sin of Israel and says how he has sinned, all his people have sinned, even though he has personally not done the sin. And talking about the power of lament and the importance of lament. And when he does that, he's heard in verse 20 and confessing all these things. They were told Gabriel, who actually he had seen previously. And this time, the first time we see him named, really, in Scripture. And he learns about the 70 weeks determined for the city and the people. And that the Messiah would come, there would be the abomination of desolation. And this is the passage a lot of people have taken. William Miller took it in the 1840s to try to speculate that that's when Jesus is going to come back after the end of this period and all these other things. But it's also where we get the idea of the abomination of desolation that Jesus will mention and will make much of in Matthew 24. Chapter 10, 11, 12 are all associated with each other. At 10, we're kind of shown a little bit behind the curtain, where it's the third year of King Cyrus of Persia. So this would say that he didn't die in the first year. They actually lived to, especially though there's the co-regents who Darius. I think we have some confusion we'll talk about in a minute. But this is going around 536 BC. He saw a vision. It caused him great distress. And then he was told, an angel came and said that he was come from the beginning when Daniel prayed, but he was hindered by the prince of Persia. That Michael, though, resisted him so he could come and to give this information, but that he had to go back and fight the prince of Persia. And these seem to be heavenly principalities. We're going to give a glimpse behind the scene. But ostensibly, the message that he stands up and gives to Darius the Mede is supposed to comfort him, is actually about all these things. And it kind of lays out what's going to happen in the future. That there will be three kings that arise for Persia that we believe are Cambyses, the Smerdis, Bardia, Interloper, Darius, the Persian. And then the next going to be Xerxes, who would go and attack the Greeks. Of course, he's looking there at the Persian War. Then future accelerates to Alexander the Great. And the fact that Alexander the Great comes, and then he will fall, and then four will rise in his place, the Diadochoi, after Alexander dies. And then there's the king of the north and the king of the south. The king of the south are the Ptolemies, king of the north are the Seleucids. And what follows is a way of speaking of the events of the Hellenistic period from around the year 300 until 167-ish, when you have Antiochus IV, who will start trying to paganized the Jewish people, forced them to all be like the Greeks, to abandon circumcision. He offers pig flesh on the altar in the temple. He makes it illegal to observe the law of Moses. And then there's a Hasmonean revolt, Maccabean revolt, and then the rule of the Hasmoneans would come after that. That's kind of envisioned in at least part of this. But the end of that does not exactly come, but we're told at the end, chapter 12, that Michael will arise, there'll be a time of distress, and then there will be the resurrection in verse 2. Some will wake to life, and others to shame and abhorrence. And then he's told to close up these words and seal the book until the time of the end, that many would dash about, knowledge would increase. Daniel would find out when these things would happen, and half a time, he did not fully understand, and there's these 1290 days and then 1335 days. He should go his way until the end, and he would rest in the end of the days. He would arise to receive what he has been allotted. And so the idea of how this would all end up. In the Greek, we have two more chapters, two more sections, additions to Daniel. Chapter 13, so to speak, is Susanna. Susanna is a very beautiful and virtuous woman. Two elders of Israel want to have way with her. She refuses them. They accuse her of having seduced them, and she is on trial for adultery. Daniel cross-examines both of them in isolation. Their stories don't match. Susanna is justified and vindicated. The two elders are condemned and stoned, and Daniel is celebrated. And in chapter 14, we have Bel and the dragon, where he's with the king of Babylon, and Babylon's king's trying to talk about how, the Bel is a god, how he eats food every night, and Daniel saying the priests come in and eat it. And so they run this test about it, and Daniel's put ashes on the floor. And so, the temple's opened up, and, Bel has eaten food, but then Daniel shows the footprints of the family members who've come in and eaten it, and priests will show the other entrance, and they're all killed. People get mad and want to get Daniel in trouble, so they throw him in a lion's den. For some reason, we bring Habakkuk into this. Habakkuk is in Jerusalem, is supposed to go feed Daniel, is brought mystically from, or transport somehow there, and feeds Daniel, comes back home. And then Daniel is vindicated, and the people who accuse him were killed, just like in chapter 6. And that ends the story of Bel and the dragon. So the book of Daniel is so incredibly important to us for a lot of reasons, because as we see, a lot of these narratives, the stories of the kingdoms that are going to come, are preparing us for that fourth kingdom, which is to be understood as the Romans, considering that's when Jesus comes. And Jesus understands himself as the one like a son of man who would receive a kingdom from the Ancient of Days. He understands the abomination of desolation coming very soon, and involves the destruction of the temple. That would happen within a generation of his death, kind of like what you see in Daniel chapter 9. In Revelation, Jesus is imagined as the one like a son of man and the Ancient of Days in chapter 1. The beast of chapter 13 is kind of the collective of the beasts from Daniel chapter 7. So much of what we have in Revelation from what Jesus is saying is coming out of Daniel. And yet there are a lot of challenges with Daniel. We don't have any historical evidence to draw us to meet. That doesn't mean he didn't exist. He may have been the guy Cyrus put in charge of Babylon, some things going on, but it's not necessarily considered a historical record. Like, well, so Belshazzar, he's not technically a king. Nabonidus is king. There are these signs. He has said that he dies in the first year of Cyrus the Persian at the end of chapter 1, but then in chapter 10 he sees a vision in the third year of Cyrus the Persian. So we've got some challenges in the text, and we need to be honest with the fact that those challenges exist. But that doesn't mean that we just throw it all out or act like it's completely fictional. That we see this man Daniel, that he represents what it looks like to faithfully serve God in the midst of the pagan empire, even the highest levels of the pagan empire, maintaining his integrity and doing so. And from the visions he receives, we have a lot of confidence about it. And Israel is given confidence, what it would have to go through, how it would endure, and how God would be glorified and would persevere, as people would persevere, and God would fulfill everything that he had promised in Jesus. And it's so important that when we read Daniel, that everything that Daniel sees will somehow find its fulfillment in what God has done, is doing, or will do in Jesus' life, death, resurrection, ascension, lordship, and his imminent return. We're so glad you've joined us as we've considered Daniel. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts about the book of Daniel, please let us know. Continue our conversation in the comments. I'm Ethan of the Adventist Church of Christ. We're a group of Christians in Los Angeles who would love to be an encouragement to you. Can we pray for you? Would you like to study with us? Is there anything we can do to help you? Please let us know. Please reach out to us at AdventistChurchOfChrist.org. You can also find us on social media in many places, Adventist Church of Christ. We again thank you. Have a great day.